It is 8:16. So driving a car, it is one of the riskiest things that a teen will do. But there are some things that we can do to improve our teenage driver's safety. My teen just started driving by himself last week, all alone in the car.
Yeah.
Sometimes with his sister. It's terrifying for us
sure.
parents, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Wendy Sue Swanson is here. She's a pediatrician at the Everett Clinic, also known to all of us as Seattle Mama Doc. So thanks for being here. You're lucky your kids are still small.
They are still small. I do brace myself. You know, each stage of parenting has its new challenge, and I'm so glad that my kids are little and not driving.
What are the risk factors? It's pretty high, isn't it?
Well,
for teen drivers.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, the number one killer of teens are motor vehicle accidents. And we look at those new drivers the most, meaning that teens in general are a very high-risk driving group. They are the ones who kind of crash the most. So they represent 14% of the population, but 30%, a third of the motor vehicle crashes and costs associated with that. Now, the reason is teenagers are teenagers. Number one, they're early drivers. They're learning to drive. They're more likely to speed. They follow too close. Unfortunately, they use alcohol when they're driving. And of course, increased risks include using a cell phone or anything that distracts them. And then they're the number one group not to wear a seatbelt. So
still?
All groups, yes, all groups.
Wow.
Teenagers are the least likely not to be wearing a seatbelt. And then really, I think the most important thing for families to remember, those first few months of driving are the most dangerous times of any driver's lifetime, meaning that first 1 and 2 months of their time on the road, the time right now that you have at your house.
And even with the laws that we have in place where they're restricted from having friends in the car, they can only drive with siblings for several months after they have their license.
Yeah.
Even with those, they still are more likely to get into an accident than older.
Yeah, well, you bring
kids.
up a great point. Those are what are called graduating driving laws. And those graduating driving laws have been found to reduce car accidents in that 16 to 19 group. First 6 months, no other kids under age 20 unless they're family members. Second 6 months, no more than 3 in the car, because we know those distractions tend to increase the risk of a crash.
Okay, so it helps, but still.
Those absolutely do help.
What about kids who have attention deficit? Because we know that a lot of kids are on medication for attention deficit or ADHD.
Yeah, precisely. We know that a large population of teenagers are using medications. Now, some teens will age out of them at that point. But what we do know, it's summertime. A lot of kids will go off those meds. These are the times not to do that. We know that inattention and distraction account for all drivers, about a quarter of the accidents. Those kids who have ADHD are at higher risk for a crash. So we know that studies prove if a child's been prescribed a stimulant, medication, or a medication to help control that impulsivity, that speeding type behavior, that distraction, they need to be using that stimulant or that other medication for ADHD when they're on the road.
So during the summer, if they're of driving age, they shouldn't go off the medication during the summer if they're driving.
That's exactly right.
A lot of parents actually don't know that, do they?
Yeah, and these young drivers, a lot of kids will do this, you know, they're test driving or start their licenses during the summertime because they've got extra time. These are the months, those first couple months that are the most dangerous. So kids who are prone to being more distracted use those medications that have been prescribed for them.
And I know some kids complain because it affects their appetite, so maybe they should talk to their doctor and maybe get a different dose if it's bothering them, but they should still stay on their medication, so maybe just talk with their doctors. Okay, so bottom line is, what do parents need to know when it comes to teenage drivers?
Well, teenagers are high risk. Those graduating driving laws have helped reduce mortal or really life-threatening car accidents in those 16 to 19-year-olds. If your child has been prescribed a medication for ADHD, make sure you're touching base with the pediatrician, particularly during those driving times, and have those kids on those meds. And then we will put on king5.com a link to sign a driving contract. However dopey it sounds, Joyce, those are awesome ways to be really clear of what are your expectations, what are the risks, and sign it both together, and those have penalties associated when kids break the rules.
I don't have that contract.
Well,
is there a form?
Yeah, king5.com. We've got a link to the American Academy of Pediatrics contract.
Oh, okay. It's never too late to get one of those. I'll get mine today.
Absolutely. Very
Dr.
good.
Wendy Sue Swanson, thanks so much. We'll put it online at king5.com.
You're welcome, Joyce.
Fantastic. Great info. Thanks.
All right, 8:21 is the time right now. Today, scientists are blasting parts of Mount St. Helens to try to figure out exactly how a volcano works inside and out. So scientists set off some charges, the first of them last night. This experiment is a huge scientific undertaking utilizing 3,500 seismic sensors and an international team. Think of it as sort of a CAT scan or ultrasound, but on a volcano. No one's ever made an image of a volcano like this before, but in the end, it will show Mount St. Helens from the Earth's surface all the way down into the base of the Earth's crust.
We'll have a better understanding of how magma systems are recharged, and so we'll be able to do better long-term forecasting for eruptions.
Right now, scientists don't know if Mount St. Helens is connected to other nearby volcanoes, but this research could change that. There will be more detonations next week.
Okay, let's check in with Tracy T. and the roads, specifically I-90. What does it look like?
Well, first, I just got word from King County Metro about the West Seattle water taxi. The Melissa Ann will be resuming service at 9 a.m. this morning from Pier 50. It looks like we had some mechanical issues, so that's what's the deal coming out of West Seattle. Let's talk about that drive, though. Westbound 90, difficult. Issaquah to Seattle, 27 minutes, averaging speed about 40 miles an hour. Yes, we are lined up from about Eastgate all the way through the zone. Wednesday mornings are busy. You throw in rain to the commute, and then a lot of people thought, well, the first 2 days were fantastic. Why not use it today? That's the reason we're running into some really tough drive coming out of the east side so far this morning. If you can get to 148th, go over to 520. You do have some hesitation on 520 between about 92nd and the Evergreen Point Floating Bridge, but things are a little difficult getting onto I-5 as well. So no good way to get around some of these backups. All right, northbound 405 still rough go, well out of the Renton S-curves. We're at 18 miles an hour. Well, there is heading into the construction zone, but we've got several problems along the way. Out at the Maple Valley Highway, you can still see State Patrol is off to the side of that ramp, but then we have a crash on northbound 405 at 30th. That's a distraction, and that's what's keeping you slow pretty much most of the way through Newcastle. All right, north sounders are going to find delays 12 miles an hour at 195th. Our southbound I-5 drive is also challenging. Here's 405 through Factoria. Traffic heading northbound on 405 is a little difficult there, but looking at southbound 5 at the county line, just jammed. 90 minutes Federal Way to Bellevue, 90 minutes from Everett to Seattle. We're at 25 minutes from Auburn to Renton on the Valley Freeway. More news, traffic, and weather after the break.